Hello and welcome to another edition of the Academy of Worship podcast. My name is Chris Davis.
And I'm Lauren Levasseur.
And we are coming to you live, recorded from my studio, which is really cool. I'm pretty stoked that this is the first real thing we've done, like, together in the same room.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah. Today we are talking about a sensitive subject. And we want to warn anyone out there that may have a weak heart or weak constitution that this may send you into convulsions. I don't know.
Put a helmet on.
Yeah. So last week we talked about should you pay your worship musicians? And this time we are, did I say last week? Last time? Whatever. Last time. Anyway, this time we are talking about, get ready for it, drum roll, gear elitism. Dun, dun, dun. And Lauren's making all kinds of faces you guys can't see. And this was brought up as a topic because we've realized that we see it all over the place. I know for me, I see it a lot online. And we're talking specifically about the praise and worship crowd here. I'm sure it can branch into other areas of musicianship and musicians, but for the purposes of the podcast, we're talking about the praise and worship. It just seems to permeate. Yeah? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just... And so what do we mean? Lauren, take it away. What do we mean by gear elitism?
All right. Quick definition.
It's so hard to classify. Let me get it started.
Okay.
It is the syndrome. I'll call it a syndrome because it seems to be, and we'll get into this later, who has it and who doesn't really. But it seems to be a syndrome where someone will think that a piece of gear, whether that be an instrument or a pedal for guitar or bass, or heck, a microphone, recording gear, any of that stuff is better than something else because someone else says so or because someone else is using it.
And I think I would add that it's going to be the key to make you better.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, that is kind of a defining point because, well, we'll get right into it. So I think the first point we're going to hit on, and I think this is a good way of starting it, is that it seems to be that the more young and inexperienced players are the ones who suffer the most from this. Mm-hmm. That, they see someone from Hillsong or Bethel, or who are the other hot ones? I don't know. Who do you guys do somebody?
You hit on the two main ones.
But they have something on their pedal board or whatever. And so, or they use a specific mic.
Well, and again, we're not tearing these people down. I mean, these musicians from these churches have obviously been doing something right. They've been doing this for a long time. People look up to them, and that's how this is starting. People are looking up to them, and they're emulating them, and they're going, "Oh, they use that.
Right.
I need to get that so I can sound like that, or so that I can be that good."
Right. This piece of gear or this thing will make me sound like them, which is the requirement by, they think, someone else, which I think could be argued. So, and here's where it gets fun. So we have player X who is new-ish or inexperienced. They see player Y has this and they want to copy them. Well, that's all well and good, I suppose, if it's just the gear, but it turns into this kind of warring thing where, like, if someone doesn't have that or if someone doesn't agree with them, they tend to get a little snippy and mean. And this is pretty big on the internet, I would say. It kind of goes pretty crazy. Like, people...
Oh, you have a Boss pedal on your pedal board.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not a Strymon pedal. Oh my gosh. Or you don't have some boutique handmade thing, right? It's not, So...
Well, everything's true bypass, right?
Don't even get me started. Anyway.
Do you have a buffer?
Do you have 2 buffers?
Yeah.
One in, one out. Anyway. So yeah, that's kind of where we're getting at is this kind of entitlement, I don't know, thing with gear. Now, I want to make clear, I mean, right now we're picking on like guitar players, but I've seen it in the audio recording world. It's very, I mean, there it's like if you're not using a Neumann mic, you might as well just pack your bags and go home. Or, whatever. You don't have really nice pre's that you're going into.
Right.
Hang it up.
Get the best plugins.
Yeah, plugins. There's one. If that doesn't mean anything to you, that's fine. Some of you will understand what that means. And instrument wise, I mean, any instruments, I mean, it's like people swear by, oh, you're not playing a Fender, or, and especially in worship, you're not playing a Gretsch. Yeah, exactly. Or, a Duesenberg, or you don't have, I don't know. And I've seen these guys, they'll get like the White Falcon.
And can't play.
God bless them. I'm sure their heart's hopefully in the right place. And, I want to hope that they're called to this ministry and stuff. But, sometimes you just go, man, maybe focus on the fundamentals.
Do you know how many lessons you could have bought with that?
Right. So anyway, I think that brings up a good point too, is that, the gear elitism thing seems to rank higher than fundamentals or understanding what they're playing. I've seen a lot of guys still, and again, we're, I guess, picking on guitarists or maybe bass players and drummers and whatever here, but they don't know why they're playing what they're playing. They're just copying what they hear, which I'm kind of digressing here, but it kind of gets them off into left field when it comes to being able to apply something to a song they've never heard. They're trying to come up with something new. But anyway, so yeah, all right. So we've covered what gear elitism is, at least in the conversation we're having, and again, we don't expect any of you out there to necessarily, or we don't expect a lot of you to agree with us. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that are huffing and puffing and throwing their guitars across the room or something, but it exists. And honestly, if you hear us mention a Boss pedal and got angry, you're the problem. No, we love you, and you're not the problem, but you should probably check your heart, bro. All right. So,
well, a friend of mine at church, I don't know if this is a quote from him or if he got this from somebody else.
Okay.
But basically, it was, if you would have learned a scale for every pedal that you've bought, you would be phenomenal.
Yeah. No, that rings true.
And it's like true. There's a time for adding gear, but none of it means a thing if you don't know your instrument, if you don't know how to play,
or how to use.
What are you adding to the team?
Right. Or in the case of maybe not an instrumentalist, but someone who's a recording person. I mean, and this is probably true for all of it, is that someone who's good, an instrument or a tool of whatever trade you're using or doing, is in the hands of an experienced person, they can make that tool work really well. Whereas the same tool in the hands of someone who's inexperienced, they wouldn't be able to use it as well. So, yeah, and that's important. But
even for a vocalist, I mean, you put a really nice mic on somebody who is a bit pitchy or, doesn't have full control over their voice, it's going to probably pick things up that a cheaper mic won't. And so you'll sound even worse with better equipment. That's
probably true. Yeah, a little more honest. Not a good thing necessarily.
Depending on the mic.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about kind of where we come from as far as churches. We said in the previous podcast we're not going to mention names, and those of you who know us, I'm sure we're already in trouble. But so I think in this respect, it'd be an interesting conversation to have about how the culture of a church, or maybe the culture of a music ministry, however you want to break it up, changes kind of the amount, I guess, of gear elitism that exists.
Does it change with size and money?
Right. So does it? Yeah. Does it? Does it?
Okay, so just in case you missed the last podcast, Chris comes from a smaller church. I come from a larger church. So in my experience, we are blessed to have a large budget and a lot of nice gear laying around that we've accumulated over the years. So we've got probably 4 or 5 different kinds of amps for the guitar players to use. We've got a lot of nice drums and the nice bass cabinets and all this kind of stuff. A variety of mics that everybody has the freedom to use, as well as equipment that they bring in as well. And so what this has done is on the good side, it's given people an opportunity to try out different equipment and to hear the differences in the tones that you can get with a different amp or, a different set of tubes or, whatever it is.
Right.
And so that's a good thing if you're learning from that. But, we've also found that it can kind of, it can get commonplace. We've had trouble with just people leaving the amp on the whole weekend because they didn't think to turn it off. And now you got to retube the whole thing. And just stuff like that. And we'll put it away when you're done. It's like, oh, well, it's always here. I didn't even think of it. Right.
Do you think do you think maybe they don't even realize the value of the gear? I mean, like
possibly not. And that's the thing. I mean, if you've had to work really hard to get the gear that you have, then yeah, you're probably going to take care of it a little more than if it was just gifted to you, or if again, if it's just laying around. Oh, I'll play the Bad Cat today.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, we'll just leave it at that. I was gonna go further, but no, I and on the opposite end of the spectrum, at least on the further other way on the line, our church doesn't have the money, so at least not to just have Bad Cats and Matchless laying around, but we do have some stuff. So we're definitely very blessed. I don't discount the blessings. In fact, I'm blessed to lead a ministry that is under a pastor that's very and elders that are very allowing of me to expand stuff. I can go like we're going to purchase an amp soon, but we have a whole drum cage and a nice keyboard set up and all kinds of stuff. So we're blessed in that, but I don't notice that kind of thing. Like if a Strymon walked through the door in our church, it's much more of the exception than the rule. Whereas, I've seen some of the boards at your church that they have, that's very commonplace, is to have very expensive boutique pedals and stuff. So, not that it's bad per se, but like you were saying, the younger, more, or like we were saying, the younger, more experienced players, that may be what they're internally expected to have. And so you have this kind of divergence of nice gear, but maybe the fundamentals are missing, or I don't know. It's a hard one to quantify, because it's, and one of the things too, just to kind of go back to the online thing, we've got, and this permeates the internet sphere. That's not a real word, but it is now. Just these boards and Facebook pages and things about gear. Even I don't even know, man. Like, you can't even tell who on there is justified in saying some of the stuff they're saying. Like, maybe there is guys on there that are just these phenomenal players, But like, if a Boss pedal shows up on a metal board, like we joked about, there's this kind of immediate like, oh, noob, like, oh, and it's crazy because that's insane. Like, it's a pedal, if you can put it to good use and you sound good using it, and it does what it's supposed to do, and most importantly, you're bringing glory to the Lord. Who cares that it's not $600?
That's a totally different topic for another time.
So what I'm saying to you right now is that if you have a Strymon on your board, you are not bringing glory to the Lord. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, it's, and let's switch gears for a second too, because, Lauren and I are both into audio recording, and I'm going to make a shameless plug. I'm not paid to say this at all, but we follow two guys online, and I'm sure there's more, but these guys are the ones we follow. We have Graham Cochran from the recordingrevolution.com
and Joe Gilder from homestudiocorner.com.
Right. And they're both guys that are, I think, examples of the whole, I don't know, anti-gear elitism. They have nice gear, but they are kind of on a quest or a mission to prove that you can make phenomenal recordings at home using very inexpensive gear. Right. And I think that was demonstrated recently by Graham, who had this crazy idea to use a $68 microphone. He recorded all of his vocals and anything else that needed a microphone with just that one, a simple one-channel interface. His laptop. He sat on his couch and recorded all the parts he played into amp sims on the DAW.
It's a DAW he'd never used before.
Right, that's true. Yeah, I think he used Reason.
Yeah,
and he uses a Pro Tools guy. So he used Reason. He had no idea how to navigate it. He didn't read anything. He just jumped in and started going.
Mixed in Starbucks.
Right, on cheap-ish cans. They were KRKs.
Yeah, I think he said like $150 or something.
And earbuds from an iPod.
Yeah.
So anyone who does any kind of audio anywhere, he heard everything what we just said and cringed, right? Everyone just kind of, oh my gosh, how did it? But you know what? The end result was beautiful. It was fantastic music. He had this 5 song EP, which again, I'm not paid to say, but go get it. It's awesome. And so anyway, that's I think our point is that in reality, you usually don't need this insane expensive gear. It definitely sounds nice and everyone can appreciate it for what it is. And I think we've hinted at this, but that really good players, they can make nice gear sound nice. They can make crummy gear sound nice. Whereas an inexperienced player, it's questionable whether or not they make even nice gear sound good. So it's...
Well, and at that point, you probably haven't even developed your ear enough to be able to tell the difference between two pieces of gear. It's just you happen to know that this one has a higher price tag, right, or that one amazing player that you idolize uses it, so it must be good. And yet, you might not recognize it from anything else. Right.
No, yeah, that's a good point. And the same goes with, I think, any piece of gear, any piece of kit that you get for something you do. Are you buying it because the culture around you says that you have to have this piece of gear to sound good or to do whatever it is you do better? Or are you getting it because you know that it's going to, accomplish whatever goal it is you're purchasing it for?
Yeah. And don't think that we're just picking on guitar players.
Oh, no, it's just guitar players.
I'm a bass player, and I have a pedal board. And now I don't need a pedal board. I totally believe in the ability to put on a bass, plug it straight into an amp, and be able to play and have it sound great. But I've been playing for 25 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, it's just tools. It's toys to play with. It's they each serve a purpose, for individual songs or for whatever. And one of our bass players at my church, he's our lead bass player, and he's he doesn't believe in using pedals.
Oh, purist.
There you go. Thanks. And so, no matter what gear he's using, no matter what bass, whatever amp, he can plug straight in and sound better than anybody else on our team consistently. That's the key. Consistently, no matter what he plays, because the tone's in his fingers.
What did you say, Lauren?
The tone's in his fingers.
I one more time.
The tone's in the fingers.
So I wholeheartedly agree.
So you have to go out and have to buy the right fingers.
yeah. So if your upgrade is fingers, we're with you. So I think we've crossed over into the sacrilegious side of this thing, which is we're saying that the tone comes from the fingers. So let's clarify that a little bit, because I think that, on our gear group that we have in Google Plus, which is called Worship Guitarist, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and plug it. Go ahead and join up with us. I put that question to the group, and it was something along the lines of, where does the tone come from? Your fingers or, your gear or whatever. And I didn't wait it with my opinion until later. But to let everyone know, if you haven't guessed already, I do believe that the majority, I'll say majority, I won't say all, because your gear does have some influence on it, but the majority of your tone, I'm putting that in quotes, there's air quotes, you can't see them on the microphone here through your speakers, but there's air quotes, the tone is coming from the person who's playing. And I had some very adamant people that just did not understand where I was coming from and did not agree. It got a little heated. I think we kept it civil, but it was one of those things where, I could tell that they were not fans of that idea. And I think I gave some examples of, people, and, Lauren, you and I were talking earlier today about, well, you tell it. Who
the story. Yeah. So there's this old story about Ted Nugent finding an opportunity to go up to Eddie Van Halen and actually play his guitar through his gear.
Right.
And, he was
like pick up Eddie Van Halen's
really
guitar.
Looking forward to it because he just loved that killer sound that he was getting.
Right.
And he played it and walked away with his head down because he could not get that sound.
Right.
What was the difference? He didn't have Eddie's hands.
Right.
He sounded like Ted Nugent.
Yep.
He didn't sound like Eddie.
Right. And I think that's what I was trying to say in the conversation was that gear has very little to do with how you sound on guitar. Like, for instance, I think who did I say? It was like John Mayer and I don't know. It was like James Hetfield or something. It was one of these totally diametrically opposite of type players, and it was like, if he played through James Hetfield stuff or whatever, he would still sound like John Mayer. Granted, the sound coming out of the amp would be, harsher, heavier, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But it would still sound like John Mayer. And so, that was my point, was that the tone comes from that. And so I think getting back to...
Right. Nugent probably sounded like Nugent playing on a Kramer through a Marshall.
Right.
Or, something like that.
Yeah.
But if you had switched out amps, he probably would have sounded like Nugent on a Kramer through a Vox.
Right.
He still wouldn't have sounded like Eddie.
Right.
And because, different amps are going to sound like different amps if you know what you're listening for.
Right.
But they're still going to sound like you.
Right. And I think that's ultimately what this kind of gear elitism tends to ignore, I suppose, or at least it can be discouraging, I guess, is what I'm kind of pulling away from some of it, because, I see some of these younger guys or somebody who, is inexperienced or is just getting into, especially the praise and worship game, because it seems like this gear thing is really heavy there. I'm sad to say that I think that the forgiveness lies in the secular world more than it does in some of the praise and worship side, which not always, but and they think all this stuff and they just have to spend buku bucks on all this stuff, and they don't realize that if you develop your chops and develop what techniques, or at least what musical theory and stuff is going into playing these parts. Like if I went up to a guy who's just kind of starting out on stuff in praise and worship, I say, what, just kind of play around the thirds and slide those around. I don't know that they know where to start with that, as opposed to if I showed them a song, and they go just copy that. It's different than saying the theory. So anyway, my point, I guess, is that it tends to confuse things and make things worse to have a culture of this kind of over gear worship. I don't know.
Well, and it's totally feasible that you could have some great, great pedals, great equipment, guitars, whatever it is, that doesn't cost a whole lot of money, but sounds great. And so we kind of need to get people away from that idea of, well, I need to spend this much amount of money on these name brands that these people are using.
Right. Yeah. And to bring it kind of back to, I guess the really the important part, it's not a Jesus juke. I'm not trying to Jesus juke anybody, but like, why are we doing it? Uh-huh. I mean, like, sure, we can talk about this and people can spend buku bucks, but like you said, I mean, when it comes down to the sound and what purpose it's serving, are we serving the Lord, or are we worried too much about whether or not that pedal on our board is the newest, coolest gadget. And you can't possibly do your job and lead people into worship because you don't have X pedal. I don't know. But, and I don't know that it necessarily comes to that for most people, but it can't help. I can't imagine it's growing, ministries having people worry about, the fact that they don't have the newest boutique pedal on their board. So,
Right.
Now I do want to clarify too that there's a difference between GAS or gear acquisition syndrome and gear elitism. Have you heard of this one, Lauren?
No.
GAS? Okay. So GAS is gear acquisition syndrome. And that's,
okay.
We have a good friend who suffers from this. And I love him to death, but the man is gear wild. But it's different. I think it's different when someone just goes, man, I love having that amp and that amp and that amp and that amp. I love having to but not be like caught up in the fact that like, well, because I have this amp, I'm better than you. He just digs having that many amps. So I think that's different. And I think that everyone who starts getting into playing any kind of music that involves gear develops at least a part of gear acquisition syndrome. So I don't fault, don't hear me in thinking I'm saying people need to, sell all their stuff to the poor and I don't know, go out and take a vow of non-musicality. I don't know. That's different. That's different. So I want to be clear. So gear acquisition syndrome, you're safe. Have at it. Everyone buy gear. It's fine. Although you'd probably be better served giving your money to the poor. I just want to say that.
So, we've been talking a lot about these, boutique pedals, hand-wired amps or hand-wired pedals, all these really nice...
Hand-wired, yeah.
Yeah, all these really nice things that people do covet and talk about all the time, and
Sure.
Who's got the newest best thing that people are paying attention to. How about the other end of it? Somebody plops down a pod,
Right.
a Line 6 pod.
Good call. Yeah.
Can they do that in church?
Right. No, that's but see, I think you're right. I mean, that's right. I mean, that's kind of the thing is the people who that's just automatically looked at as, what are you doing?
Yeah, you idiot.
How you can't possibly use any kind of guitar modeling in this place.
Right. Exactly.
Jesus doesn't come to places that have guitar modeling. How dare you? And so I'm with you. I think that's the epitome, or I think that's like, I think you've reached your goal of completely, you just failed if you've gotten to that point. And go ahead.
Is it possible to get a good sound, a good tone out of what is it? It's the HD 600, whatever.
HD 500s and 300s and stuff. Yeah,
there you go.
Just say Line 6, because usually
anything from Line 6.
The Line
really.
6 brand is usually frowned upon by Gary elitists. Right. Not all. I have met some that actually. Anyway, to answer your question, no, you can never ever get a good tone from that. No, I'm kidding.
All right, we'll see you next week.
All right, see you later. So yeah, no, I definitely think you can. Again, it comes down to how someone needs to know how to use the gear. I've heard people that plop down a modeling, whether it's a floor unit or the little kidney bean or whatever, that sound really bad, simply because they chose bad settings. And I've heard people play them that if you closed your eyes, you wouldn't know they weren't playing through, really nice gear. So,
but they put the time in,
right,
to really dial that thing in.
And again, yeah, and they understand the gear that they're using. They're not just turning on a preset and going, "It sounds great," because So, I mean, a good example would be Lincoln Brewster.
Right.
I mean, he for the longest time. I mean, he's a guitar player that a lot of praise and worship guys look at as going, well, I may not like his music, but he's super talented and he can play. But for the longest time, he used Line 6 stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he didn't know what he was getting to venue, so he just bring his, I think it was HD 500 or whatever it was, and just go for it. And very few people could argue he had a bad tone. So,
well, and here's an argument for people that are just getting into it too. It's like, how much money are you going to spend on that complete pedal board that has all the pedals lined up that you would need to do all these different things versus the all-in-one?
Right. There is an argument to be made there, financially especially. In fact, I went down that road.
It's like, I can play on any amp I want. They're all right in the box.
Yeah. When I started, I didn't have the amp part of the modeler, but I definitely had I had an M13, which I regret selling. I wish I would have kept it, but I had an M13, and that was all my stomp boxes. Because I figured, well, why would I invest in 80 pedals when I could, spend one chunk of money and have all of them, And to a certain extent, that was true. There was a lot of really good stuff that was happening in that pedal.
I'm starting to see the M5s pop up on people's boards.
Oh yeah, M5s, M9s, those are everywhere. Yeah. So I agree that they can be used well. Now I will say that having done that, having used the modelers, I prefer having separate pedals. I don't know what it is. The sounds I can get are just different and better. I don't know what to say. It's weird. It's not that I think they sound bad. I just prefer I don't know. It's.
Would you liken it to the difference between using a solid state amp and a tube amp?
No, I wouldn't go that drastic with it.
Okay.
Honestly, it's probably just something that I prefer because I prefer it. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. I'd be hard pressed to plop an M13 down and then put my pedal board against it, which, by the way, for anyone listening, is not any kind of expensive board whatsoever. I think you'd be hard pressed to find significant differences in it. I didn't like the drives in it so much, but anyway, I digress. We're getting off topic. So I guess bottom line is, just if someone is struggling with gear elitism, and you know who you are if you're listening to this, and you may not, if you don't want to admit it and you're getting mad at anything we just said, it's okay to disagree with us. But if you're having issues with anything we're saying, I'm pretty sure that means you suffer from it. So not to call anyone out, but I think we just need to look at how it affects everything around us. Is it a culture thing, or is it really because you're a player that's phenomenal and can play and knows exactly what they are doing and why they need it, and you have the money to spend on it? And hey, and again, I want to say, just for anyone out there, I give those kind of guitar players a pass on this, because they're not really snooty about it. Like they don't look down on players younger or more inexperienced than them that have, again, Boss pedals or whatever, or Joyo, whatever. And they don't look down on them. They just kind of go like, how can I help you? So they get a pass. It's like, those guys are cool, but I don't know.
Yeah. Share the knowledge.
Do it. I think we're done.
I think we covered it.
Beat
it to death.
We did. No need to ever come back to this ever again. So, we just want to thank you guys for listening to us. And again, we understand that, ultimately this whole thing is about Jesus Christ. This whole podcast is about us as worship leaders, worship musicians, and the stuff that we do for his glory. And so anything we say, we apologize if we offend anybody. We're not going for that. We just want to bring stuff that we see in the worship sphere. I'm going to use that word again, the worship sphere. Stuff that we see, we just want to talk about it. We want to give our opinions on it.
Yep.
Sure, we want to ruffle some feathers, but we just want to ruffle them for the Lord. Is that a thing? Can you ruffle feathers for the Lord?
If people are listening, sure.
Yeah, that's true. All 4 of you out there listen to our podcast. So yeah, don't take us too seriously. We're dorks. So again, this has been the Academy of Worship podcast. I'm Chris Davis.
I'm Lauren Levasseur.
And we will see you next time. We also want to remind you to check out youtube.com/Academy of Worship. We have a channel there that we have a few videos on. We're hopefully working on some more soon that can hopefully bless you and help your team with any kind of worshipy stuff you do. Okay, guys, we will see you next time, and we hope you enjoyed this one. Take it easy.